Hello, everyone. It's Kylie Davis here, founder and president of the Proptech Association. And it's great to see you all here for our very first Proptech panel for 2025. I'm here today on Wongal land on the Parramatta River of Sydney, part of the Eora Nation. And before I begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, especially so close after Australia Day, the Proptech Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who might be joining us today. And I'd especially like to thank the very fabulous Stone and Chalk who make all of our events possible and have been our long-time sponsors of the PropTech panels. And for those of you who don't know Stone and Chalk, it was founded as a not-for-profit in Sydney in 2025 to help fintech, back when fintech was a thing, and help them startups commercialise and grow. But from 40 startups back in 2015, it now has around 250 startups in Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide, covering all areas of emerging technology, but especially including PropTech. And currently around 20 PropTechs call Stone and Chalk home at both the Startup and the Scale-Up Hub in Central. Now, it is the new year, it's 2025, and I don't know about you guys, but from where I'm standing, it feels like 2025 has kicked off with a pace that is even faster than 2024, God help us. In just the past week alone, we've seen so much change with the inauguration of Trump in the US, big tech taking the knee, new Chinese AI launched just this week, and here in Australia, a bunch of noise around an election that's to come. Can it seriously be 3 years since the last one? But like they say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So we've still got long-standing issues in our reality, like housing affordability, housing supply, interest rates, tech adoption and resistance to it, the growth of AI, change management, environmental standards, energy efficiency, privacy and cyber security. These are ever key and present issues against a backdrop of a rapidly changing economy. So what does 2025 hold for PropTech, and what do you need to know to navigate it? So my panel of experts in this area are Sev Thomassian, Head of Product at Domain. Welcome, Sev. Give us a wave.
Hello, everyone.
John Minns, the former New South Wales Property and Strata Services Commissioner. Hey, John.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And Chris Havill, Director of Engineering at JLL. And hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, yeah, very well, thank you.
Sorry. And look, all three are new board members of the PropTech Association of Australia, or PropTech Australia as we are fast going to become known as. So welcome, gentlemen. Great to have you on the panel.
Thanks,
Thank you
Kylie.
very much.
Thanks, Kylie.
Cool. So, Sev, I'm going to kick off with you. And look, just before we start, if anyone's got any questions, hey, Trish, great to see you on the call. But if anyone's got questions as we go, please pop them into the chat and we'll try to incorporate them as part of the conversation. The goal with this is to be interactive. But Sev, let's kick off with you because there is so much going on in residential PropTech at the moment. What are your predictions about PropTech for residential property this year?
It's a great question, Kylie, and as you say, it's highly topical as well. I really think we'll continue to see increased applications of big data and AI right across the ecosystem. I believe areas such as buyer decision-making, agent efficiency, and also transaction efficiency are going to be particular interesting areas. So, for example, for buyers, I think we're going to see more informed buyer decision-making. We're already seeing some of this coming through with predicted AVMs, so automated valuation models that predict house prices, and you'll see them on our website and some of our competitors. But what AI and big data is letting us do is become much more accurate in terms of that price prediction. In terms of market trends, I think there's going to be a great focus on local neighbourhood analytics going forward, helping buyers make much more informed decisions about the neighbourhoods that they also want to select into. Virtual property tours, enabling remote buyers access to inspect properties, and staging and visualizations, I think will also be increasing trends that we'll see this year. On the real estate agent side, I think the agent efficiency tools will also start to transform. Everything from listing creation, AI, big data is going to change writing copies. AI at some point in the future might even, listen into conversations as agents speak to vendors in the living room. But I think that's still a further while off. People are still very uneasy with that, but it's amazing what can be done in that space as people do become more comfortable. But a lot of the other manual repetitive tasks will start to get replaced and enhanced. So automatic templates processing, property reports generated via live AI tools, and then market trends and predictive AVMs to inform vendor discussions.
So can I dive into ask a couple of questions around some of those things? It sounds like what we're seeing is that the buyer control or the buyer engagement around that, end-to-end transaction is going to be a big focus. Is that what I mean? Because buyers have been neglected for quite a long time, or been made to self-serve around buying a property, right? So you're seeing a lot of the technology improving the life of buyers.
Absolutely. So if I think back to being a buyer, and whether I'm, an Australian returning from overseas and I'm trying to figure out where it is I want to buy, or people coming to this country, or whether it's even a changing lifestyle circumstances. So I might be looking at starting a family. I'm living at inner city Sydney, and all of a sudden I want to go and venture on and find what's the right property for the next stage of my of my life journey. And traditionally, what people have had to do when they're looking at buying or renting is they've had to do that neighborhood or that area search themselves. They've kind of got to figure out where it is that I want to buy. And then once I've identified that neighborhood, then I go into a list-based search or a map-based search in terms of what's the right property. And those two stages, especially that first stage, I think what we're going to see in the next 12 months plus is a lot of AI being used to transform that buyer experience and empower buyers into more efficiently and effectively selecting where it is that they want to buy. And then that second stage as well, we're going to see some changes where it's also going to help them find the right house or the right home within that geography they're looking at.
Yeah, because it's a perennial question as a buyer, isn't it? It's not like it's not really I need to buy a house in XYZ suburb. The question is I've got XYZ budget, and these are the things that are important to my lifestyle. So help me find the best property that matches that search criteria, which isn't necessarily geographically based. It's more function and feature and benefit based.
That's right. And so with technology evolving, it'll change how you can search for that, how you can find that right home, rather than going through the usual journey that people have done historically, which is, let's start at the top and then let's work out the area and then let's, search within that area. AI empowers buyers to change how they do search for that property.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. And I want to dive in and ask a few questions about the AVM thing, because I feel I'm going to ask a controversial question. It feels like everybody's doing AVMs at the moment. Like I see so many, everybody's got an AVM. What differentiates, do we need all of these AVMs out there? What differentiate, like which ones are going to be the ones that survive? Are they all going to start to come together? And does an AVM inform the buy price, or does an AVM inform the amount that you'll borrow?
So there's a series of great questions in there, Kylie. Let me unpack those and try to answer them one by one. And if I've missed one, please remind me. So first of all, as you say, there's a prevalence of AVMs in the market. And while it's important that there are numerous AVMs, there probably are quite a few at the moment. But in terms of what differentiates a good AVM from a great AVM, the model's part of it. So you do need to have a good model. But effectively, what's really going to drive the fundamental difference in performance is who's got the better data. The data informs the model. And so what's really important is having vast amounts of high quality data in those models. And that's where it gets interesting, because there's certain players in the industry, and we're absolutely one of those, who has billions of data points that we're able to combine and leverage into these models to get a fairly accurate prediction on price. However, going forward, as more data is ingested into these models, and also as the models themselves get better, what we're going to see is an increased accuracy across the board. And so, for example, AI isn't just a tool to make the model better itself. AI is also a tool that can be used to improve the data flowing into the models.
Right. And so how should buyers be using AVMs? Because I Are they informing the amount that they should offer to the agent, or are they informing how much they should expect the bank's going to lend them?
So AVMs should be treated as a guide, right? They're a really good tool, but at the end of the day, what a property's worth is what a buyer's prepared to pay for the property and what a vendor's prepared to sell at. And so AVMs are a great guide, especially we're doing a lot of research from a desktop, but nothing beats actually going out, inspecting the property and then forming that, that estimate yourself when you're walking around the property. So I'd say it can be used for a range of matters, including the ones you've listed. But at the end of the day, they're a tool. They're not they're not the answer.
Yeah, yeah. So what are you seeing in terms of like that agent efficiency thing that you were mentioning before? How much more efficient do agents need to be? How much more can technology pull out of the work that agents do, in your view?
Yeah, in short, a lot.
Yeah.
It's amazing the amount of agents I still see walking around with a pen and paper and doing things quite manually.
Yeah.
And that's because there's some great solutions out there, but also the better the solutions become, I think the more we'll see them gain traction in the market. So look, the short answer is a lot. A lot of those lower value added tasks, agents should be spending a lot of their time finding that next listing, winning that listing, and then making sure they do everything that possible they can to find the buyers for that property and transact at the right price. But at the moment, a lot of agents are still, caught up day to day in a lot of the back end processes. And yes, they've got functions in their office that help them, and they've got some technology tools, but there's still a lot that can be done in that space to really increase that efficiency and then let agents spend time on the real value adding tasks that only they can do.
Okay. And so big data is obviously going to play a really big role. Well, it is playing a big role, right? We see it increasingly, and we've passed the tipping point on big data. Like it's now, we're all leaving a trail everywhere we go. But have you noticed any increased anxiety from agents or buyers around data? What are your predictions around privacy and security?
Look, that's a great question, and that's one of the aspects that we actually, everyone needs to get absolutely right when it comes to the potential of AI and big data. With more data available and with enhanced methods to analyze the data, the risks associated with data privacy, misuse, security breaches, they also increase. And so it requires increased attention and robust safety measures to be put in place. So for example, I can talk about some of the things we're doing at Domain, and then I see other instances across the industry. But Domain, we place the highest priority on data security. It's an area that we invest in significantly. We're consistently implementing rigorous measures. We're conducting behind the scenes work to ensure all the data is managed responsibly, securely, and then also in full compliance with industry standards and regulations.
What standards do you think we should be, as an industry, saying we subscribe to? That's a question without notice, so I'm sorry about that.
No, and absolutely. I'd say it's the highest standards. And
Yeah.
we only have to look around at what's happened with other players in the industry, right? So, for example, Optus recently had a whole lot of unwanted press, and there's other companies, it's quite a long list. Each one of those incidents shows just how important it is to get data security right. No one can afford any breaches, especially in an industry like property where brand and reputation matters and trust is so important. I'd say this is an industry where we have to hold ourselves to the highest possible standards.
Okay. And so what's on your roadmap at Domain? I think, if there are PropTechs on this call and they're all dying to know, what's on your roadmap at Domain, and what sort of rollouts can you give us a sneak peek into what's coming?
Yeah, of course. If I look at 2025, I can give you a sneak peek around a few areas. So firstly, evolving property search. At the moment, we're absolutely focused on augmenting our search experience to guide users in their property journey. So rather than a basic search where users enter a suburb, then apply filters, and then get stuck if nothing relevant appears, we're going to provide feedback to help users define realistic search criteria and then uncover properties they might not have considered. Secondly, personalization at scale. So over the past 3 years, we've invested heavily in personalizing the experience for signed up users. We've got a new MarTech platform in place, and we've started tailoring product experiences to individual property seekers. So we're making the experience more engaging and effective for finding the dream property. Third is market transparency and data-driven insights. True to our tagline, know what we know, we aim to empower property seekers with unique insights to simplify key steps in the buyer journey. So think tools and data that not only inform decisions, but actively guide users. They're the three big areas, Kylie, in terms of our roadmap for 2025, and I hope you enjoyed the sneak peek.
Awesome. And so have you got any, like, so, 5 years ago, prop techs were getting told, go an inch wide and a mile deep, because, then you can have really great specialization. And then basically, and the big guys, and Domain's one of them, haven't had time to sort of build some of this stuff onto their roadmap. So this is how you get yourself bought, and we saw this sort of come to fruition over the last couple of years. But do you have any prop tech expertise on your wish list that you haven't been able to get to, that you're looking to integrate in Domain's offers?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. And the answer is there's plenty, right? There's so much in the space that's interesting. And so in terms of prop techs, looking at launching innovative solutions and ones that are really going to drive traction and get the insights at Domain and other players in the space, I'd say focus on the customer first. Start looking at the customer, understand what their biggest pain points are, and then work back from there. And I think that approach is much more valuable than pointing to one or two distinct areas. I'd say that will help you identify, the needs in place and what you can build, whether it's in 2025 or beyond.
Awesome. And look, we've had a great couple of questions, which I'm just I might keep yours for the end, Ben, but Sam's asked a good one, which is kind of relevant, which is when you're talking about property seekers, we've talked a lot about buyers, but what about renters? Are you increasing functionality for renters too?
Yeah, so when I talk about, so property seekers, of course, covers both buyers and renters, and they're both really important categories. At the moment as well, given some of the challenges we have both in the buyer market, but especially in the renter market, that's incredibly important. So, if I talk about buyer search, treat that as it's both buyers and renters. It's broader. Sometimes I just, I use the term buyer because,
Shorthand.
if we look at both, it's a bit shorthand in terms of, people in the market often making their biggest decision in their lifetimes is often the buying decision. And so therefore, sometimes I gravitate towards that as an answer.
Yeah. Look, one of the trends that I see coming, not just in 2025, but going on, is if we cannot get our brains around to solve housing affordability, then the rental crisis becomes, we have families with small children or kids at school who are trying to stay in school districts to keep continuity of education, being forced to pay increasingly high, rents to just stay inside school. So, and that's going to have real kind of consequences for us as a society if we start moving families around for affordable rent in the future. Anyway, that's not a 2025 prediction, that's the next 5 years prediction. John, I'm going to move on to you now, because while we're sort of in this residential space, because you've just come out of the role of New South Wales Property and Strata Services Commissioner. What are the key trends that you've been seeing that are impacting residential property through the lens that you've had?
Yeah, well, I think one of the important things for today's conversation is, what are the problems people are facing at the moment? These are the things that government are trying to come up with answers for. In most cases, pretty poorly or a long way behind the trend. But it's just so important, isn't it, to all of us in the PropTech world, if we can solve a problem or improve an experience, which is a lot of what Sev was talking about, then we're on the right track. So I tend to start, I've got to say, with the macros, trends. What's going on in the big picture? What are the problems that the end consumer are dealing with? And there's a few of them. I had a look at Roy Morgan leading into the election. We're going to see a lot of this sort of stuff. 57% of Australians are concerned about cost of living in the economy, and it's probably going to be the biggest influence at the election. But that also means it's important to businesses and people now. So I think we need to not forget that in 2025. It's going to stay there, and doesn't have an immediate solution. One interesting one, and I'm not quite sure how this is going to play out, but given we've got various places with a shortage of rental accommodation and some oversupplied and some undersupplied areas, there's a lot more Australians currently concerned, according to Roy Morgan, about excessive immigration and its impact on affordability. And I think that affordability and that connection and supply is something solutions are going to be really, really valuable in, and they're going to be valuable, because people will be prepared to pay for them if they make sense. But one that was really interesting is that, global warming and climate change has plunged in terms of people's concerns from a few years ago at the last election. And that's interesting. It's not suggesting that people don't think it's still important, but what they're saying is, right now that's a big problem at someone else's. I'm really worried about whether I can actually afford to pay the Strata levies or pay my rent or find a property to move into. And I think we'd be well, yes,
if
we'd
the place
be
burns down.
we'd be well advised just to say, let's solve some of those real problems, and where we've got a solution, be able to connect it to value or connect it to revenue or connect it to cost of living is probably going to be really, really important. Tenants' rights aren't going away. It's a wonderful thing in Australia, of course, is every jurisdiction you go to has got a whole different set of rules. And I know there's many people probably on this call as well who've sworn at me and others over the years saying, why is it different? Why do we have to adapt to every single jurisdiction in Australia? Unfortunately, that's not necessarily going away. So, but I think what is really important is we've got a changing market. Not all landlords are finding tenants as fast as they were. Rents have reduced in some areas. They're stabilised in others. Those on market are extending. This is now a time where being able to influence governments not to go too far down the rental protection track at the expense of investors who are paying pretty high interest rates at the moment is probably going to be important. So I think we need to be conscious of that and help them along the way as well.
Do you think 2025 will be the year we stop calling them tenants and start calling them renters properly? Like, so, we can actually, get rid of this 14th century language that we have around it?
Well, strangely, I think tenants is more acceptable than landlords, isn't it? And in New South Wales legislation, they're still landlords. So I think the idea of property providers and property residents is really, really important. I would hope so. I think language is important, as we've seen. But how that plays out right at the moment, many people probably don't care what you call them as long as you can help them. And I think that client experience thing is really critical. And the last one for me is,
sorry, what needs to happen to extend lease periods? Because security of tenure is, like, as renters get older, as they move into different parts of life, like, it's not like you just rent when you're younger and then get married and have kids and buy something. That's where we are fundamentally in a position as a society where that is changing. A 6-month rental for a family of 4 is not a great outcome when you've got small kids and things like that. But what needs to happen, to start to make longer tenancies viable and desirable?
Yeah, it's an important question, and there's probably as many answers as there are tenants, which is not a good answer to your question. So maybe we'll try and break it down to the simple stuff. There is a few things that need to happen. One is, if we are going to have renting for life, which there's an increasing number of people expecting to do that, they are genuinely going to be looking for that improved situation. That sort of flies in the face of the fact that the majority of tenancies are ended by the tenant. Across jurisdictions, 75 or 80% of tenancies are generally ended by the tenant, not by the landlord, despite all the conversations on forced evictions and other details like that. So we've got to be careful that the flexibility of renting can still stay as an opportunity for people, but those who are looking for that as a lifestyle can continue. What is interesting though, yeah, when we look at a lot of the numbers that are coming out from some of the rental platforms, when we talk to real estate agents, yeah, we're seeing that, yeah, many owners would love to have a long-term tenant. Yeah, they're not there to, to put the rent up every 3 or 4 months, kick someone out, go through the pain of re-advertising. They would dearly love a great tenant looking after the property who's prepared to stay there for a long time and would also be prepared to enter into long-term agreements. So I think, there's a horses to courses approach, but one thing that may well come through in 2025, if people are finding it hard to get into the buying market, is we're going to have more pressure from the consumer for longer tenancies, and I think that'll be a good thing.
So what are the trends that you see within the legislative and regulatory environment? Because they have been changing, there's been a lot of noise and movement over the last sort of 12, 18 months in there. What do you see coming next?
Well, one big one that a number of people attending today may be aware of, some of you may not, is the Crunch 2 entities in anti-money laundering. This is going to be big, it's going to be significant, and from what I've seen in AusCrack, taking into account the impact on the sector, how this is going to be regulated and how it's going to be enforced is going to be difficult. The Australian government has said we have to enter into this space. We're lagging internationally, and it's going to cost us if we don't do more to prevent money laundering. What that's meaning on the front line for real estate agents or for lawyers is something entirely different, that it is entirely possible this could be a very expensive, very difficult process for them to comply with, when over 90% of them aren't dealing with major developments. They're not dealing with major cash services in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. They're dealing with standard transactions, which is not generally where money laundering is occurring. So there is an important opportunity for tech in this space, Kylie, because this is something that we can start to help solve problems, and we need to be part of the conversation with AusCrack and government as well as with the agents to make sure that it doesn't cause chaos when it's launched.
Well, and also with the banks, because like if you've had to prove your identity to a bank recently as part of this legislation, it's kind of weird to have to explain to a bank that, no, I am not going to sign a PDF physically and then attach it to an email and send it back to you to prove my identity for to prevent fraud. Like, there is technology to solve this. And in fact, what you're asking us to do is actually to open us up to all of the worst practices that we could. And so anyway, I'll get off my high horse. What about one of the things that we saw over the last 18 months, John, has been state governments all coming up with their own idea on how to, I'm going to say tinker around the edges, but to try and fix some of, I'd be able to make an announcement about how they fix something, but actually adding to the complexity and the manual administration around for agents and also for renters and buyers. What's your prediction in that space? Are we going to see some more kind of harmonisation of what good legislation looks like in areas that are state-based?
You're looking for someone on a high horse. That's a great question to ask. I've been around for 20 years trying to deal with the issues around harmonisation of real estate legislation, and no one wants it. Governments don't want it, industry don't want it. It's been a massive problem for years. So I don't think there's an impetus to do that. Governments will go down the track of automatic mutual recognition for practitioners, but that's a really lukewarm solution to it. What I think is probably important in that space, and it's something that I think we can do better in the tech sector, I think industry needs to do better with, and that is having much better, more consistent data across the country, so we can be really clear. Let's say, what are the top 5 problems that are facing every government? What sort of solutions have we got? And is it now possible for the property sector and the technology sector together to start leading government rather than waiting for reactive regulation and legislation to come in? Because we can't solve that problem. We can't solve short electoral cycles, as you referred to earlier on. What we can solve is if we can prove through great data and great insight that we can solve problems for consumers who the government is worried about, that's probably one of our best routes, I think, to solving some of those problems.
Yeah, and I think having some stated standards that we adhere to, whether they're ISOs or basically being able to identify and articulate what members subscribe to as our standards, would be really helpful. What about what do you think a lot of this, what do you think this means for residential PropTech? What do we need to, what else do we need to be getting in order?
Well, I think, yeah, great ideas are great ideas, and we've got an absolute huge range of great ideas across the technology sector, and some really brilliant people doing it. The one thing I know from both sides of this coin is that at the moment when businesses are worried about where the next listing is coming from, or the fact that their cost of employment has risen and their margins are being squeezed, or they're worried about whether they're going to make a profit at the end of the year. One of the really big things is they need to hear how we're going to work together with you in order to increase your profitability. I understand your problem, and here's how we can help you solve it. I think that's one of the things. What's the return on investment from adopting technology is going to become really important. Or alternatively, does it provide a really compelling point of difference that I can leverage within the business? So those are the couple. The other one, to your inch wide, mile deep discussion earlier on, is frankly, a business could be absolutely delighted with how clever and what a great solution something is, but if they can't integrate it relatively seamlessly with their tech stack, you know what, it's just too hard at the moment when there's many other pressures, including paying their own mortgage to deal with. So it's just helping through that pathway. How can we get the integration right? How can we get the experience right? And is that going to make a difference to the end consumer? So I think those things within this environment we're in are more important than they've probably ever been.
Yeah. So do you there seems to be a few headwinds, but do you see opportunities in there as well?
Oh, huge opportunity. I think this is the time where everyone has a problem. That sounds negative, but everyone actually has a problem at the moment because we're now starting to deal with an environment that has been 20 years in the making in many cases around things like housing supply or affordability. We've got the issues in the Strata sector where Strata is 90% or more of solving problems around affordability and housing supply in Australia, and yet there's a significant lack of confidence and transparency viewed by many consumers in that sector. So solutions that are going to help people now in their day-to-day lives are enormously important. Some of that could be around transparency. How good are we with transparency? How confident can I be as a consumer that I trust this? Therefore, I can stop worrying about is it right or not and start worrying about how can I adapt to it. I think the opportunities for great partnerships with either businesses or consumer organisations have never been greater than they are at the moment. We're really seeing a time where a trusted partner is so important when I'm worrying about the day-to-day. If I don't have to worry about is this going to work for me? Are they interested, or now I've bought, are they going to go away and leave me alone? That's something that is an immense opportunity. But I would still suggest there's a couple of really big things there. One is influencing government policy is possible. To your point, we've just got to get better at having really solid data to do it, and that's about working together across the country. Consistency of data standards enormously important. And all these things are feeding into what's happening in the AI environment, aren't they? I mean, let's face it. The announcement yesterday from China appears to have turned the world on its head, and Nvidia's shares have plunged. So, what does that mean for us? Who knows? But a lot of confidence around there. So many areas that we can help people with.
Yeah, well, AI is only as good as the data that you give it, right? And if we don't have data standards, then we don't know how good the AI is going to be in what it's responding. I've still got this visual imagery, Sev, of everyone sitting around the lounge room with an agent in front of them and having to say, hey, Google, record this, like, basically record this meeting like we do with Zoom now. That doesn't feel unreal as a concept. Chris, I'm going to move. Thank you, John. Chris, I'm going to move over to you now. You've been waiting very patiently, because what we're seeing in the commercial real estate space has actually, a lot of the adoption and focus has actually been driven by a bit of by federal and legislation in particular. So what are your predictions around what's going to be influencing in 2025 the commercial PropTech sector?
So let me know if you can still hear me. I'm thinking that it's likely to be quite exciting, but chaotic that we're moving into, because we've got new players that are able to release solutions that can offer huge shifts on how we perceive and use the tech, particularly DeepSeek, making that significant impact over the last couple of days. What Sev pointed out very well was the concern about trust, security, and data privacy, because those are fundamental to be able to deploy tech at scale across an enterprise and safely. So I think that the challenge for companies is going to be on how those solutions are incorporated into their business and scale to be enterprise ready. So this year I'm expecting many companies will begin to realize that the true capability of their platforms as they improve their integration, like John mentioned, which was a big challenge, and how those can offer a more seamless performance. So what we're seeing is things like virtual tours, like again what Sev mentioned for the residential market, generative fit outs, really deep insights into demographic behavior, automating commercial buildings, and things like asset management and property management AI assistance are some big things that we're expecting to come out with more prominence this year. So I think those companies that have built slowly on good data principles are going to be better placed to reap the benefits of those, and other companies are going to have to take gambles, and we may see some hits and we may see some misses. So it's going to be quite exciting in that regard. So I do believe that the turmoil that we've seen over the last couple of days is likely to continue, and it could be quite chaotic, but also that's the time where you get the most innovation.
Yeah, but so PropTechs who go into the commercial space need to be really good at solution selling, don't they? And they need to be really good at solution selling at all the levels of every of every layer into a commercial PropTech business. And what I'm hearing from you is that they're going to be they're really going to need to double down on that, because it really is that implementation. Have you got any tips? That's hard if you're a startup or if you're an early stage. Have you got any tips for how to do that, or how to engage better with commercial property PropTech buyers?
I would say don't want to reinforce the silos that are already in existence across the vast wealth of commercial property platforms that we see. So being able to integrate seamlessly and have it being open for those integrations, and not saying this is a cul-de-sac that you're going to go down with your solution is going to be key, because we need to be able to allow a single sign-on for our clients and our teams. We don't want to have another platform, and what we see, we're not single platform. We have just a vast array of different platforms for different problems, and what people are demanding more is less platforms. People don't want something else to learn, something else to log into. They want intuitive systems, but there's no intuitive system that can offer everything. But if you can offer a function that can complement other platforms that are already strong players in the market, you've got a better chance of being incorporated into a business, I believe.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So because everyone for every job at the moment has 58 tabs open on their computer, and a double screen's not enough. You need a triple screen, right, to have all of the things open. What I'm hearing is, maybe we'll talk about this, but maybe there's like an opening for a layer of AI that sits over the top of it, like we're starting to see coming out with Pilot and Gemini. I mean, they're great, but they always function inside their silo, right? So, AI, I want you to open up all of these things, make them work together, and I'll give you the instruction and you do it through the tech.
And I think that's probably one of the trends for the coming year that you've hit the nail on the head with. So the thing that I'm really, really excited about for next year will be agent-based technologies. So that's not the agents that Sev and John were talking about. These are autonomous systems that can make decisions and take actions based on the data and help streamline processes and improve performances, improve those systems. So they'll be able to dip into the different data possibly at the platform level, possibly at the data level, depending on how they're programmed. But they'll be able to take action, and that will offer an enormous amount of operational improvements for better decision making. But the one thing that allowing a computer program to run autonomously is not always predictable, which brings us right the way back to trust, because the moment that starts to make some rogue decisions or goes off course, the trust will be lost. So they need to be deployed initially on inert systems where they can't start to take too much control, but it's having a 24/7 workforce is commercially very, very, very attractive. And I think that we will be pressured more into deploying agents from the commercial perspective. And you'll see the larger companies like Salesforce have just released or making announcements on Agentforce, which is an agent that will run 24/7 across your Salesforce data. And that will start to be able to make decisions, offer insights in the first instance, and then potentially take actions for you as you allow it to, and you give it more permissions. So that could be a potential solution to the wealth of different platforms that we've got on the market at the moment.
So now you have a full-on background and education and training in AI. So how do you see AI changing the commercial property experience? Where do you see it going? Like we've got these agents, but how will it impact how we work in our buildings or how we're using our commercial buildings?
So I think immediately the biggest shift probably is a bit mundane. It's like whatever everyone agrees probably that the time that we take to respond to emails or phrase certain responses in a certain way, look for contract clauses. Those are the sort of things that can be solved very, very quickly. So removing that mundane, I'm repeating a Microsoft Copilot phrase, it removes the mundane tasks that you don't want to have to do. So that's really made the biggest impact. Then it's going to move into allowing us to make better decisions, because we'll be able to retrieve the information that's relevant to the decisions that we're making with much more accuracy and offer good insights into those pieces of information. So you're offering insights across different data silos, which would take, you're changing potentially hours worth of aggregation and analysis into 30 seconds to produce what would be the results for many decisions every day, or qualitative decisions, and to distill it into a very small amount of time that you can offer answers to clients and internal teams immediately, very, very quickly.
And what about the role of big data?
Yeah, I think everyone's said that the quality of data that you put in gives you the quality of the AI. For me, big data is absolutely key. It's about good data governance principles, because we'll see this year who's actually invested in that. It's kind of a foundational task. It doesn't get a lot of glamour. It doesn't get a lot of plaudits. But it's one of those things that you're never going to be able to build on the poor foundation. And we'll see who's invested in that this year. So particularly being able to map data across the different silos. So for those that have got that in place, they'll be able to really exploit that mapping to allow the AI, either agents or lower level assistants, to read from both and then aggregate those and come out with insights. For those that haven't invested in that data mapping across silos, then AI could take the role for that mapping. So there's always an opportunity. And I think setting up the tools that will identify and link records is actually not going to be as hard as it previously was. It was a much more of a manual churn process before. Yeah, as I said, the problem with these initiatives, it's quite boring, and foundational activities are critical, but they're vastly underappreciated.
Well, one of the fundamental differences between residential property and commercial property in Australia has been the residential agents have been quite open to, you know, sharing, aggregating, allowing third parties to capture the data and then kind of build it into new products and turn it into things. And there's a proportion of people who think, oh no, it's my data and I won't participate. But overall, the ecosystem has thrived and done quite well because there is open, fairly constant and consistent data that's openly available. But the commercial sector has always gone, no, mine, like this is not sure, to the point where there's not even a consistent way of describing really commercial property in terms of, you know, like in the same way that you can capture features for residential, it's often very quite bespoke in commercial property. So there's been a bit of a data arm or a data arms war, I guess, in everyone hanging on to their data. Do you see that that's actually something that in 2025 is going to have worked for commercial property, or is it something that's still going to be a challenge?
I think the old maxim that unified we're stronger is, and to get, well, sorry, failing, divided we fail, unified we succeed. It's
right.
probably appropriate here if I can get it right. We will face that competition, and that will continue throughout the next year and onwards, because of the players involved in the commercial property are the global players, and I can't see them cooperating across all of this immediately. It will be an arms race to release and show that they are leading with the AI revolution in property, and being able to actually prove that is going to be the difficult challenge. So whilst we can see that the cooperation will be beneficial, these companies operate across such huge amounts of functions that I can't see that cooperation coming in anytime soon. We may face the amalgamation of some companies where there's a realization that there's good foundations in one and the gamble hasn't paid off for others. So some of the small players may drop out, but then also with the larger companies where you get entrenched systems and processes, they can be easily disrupted by smaller players coming to the market and disrupting the methods that have been used in the past.
Mm-hmm. So what's on your roadmap, Chris? Like what at JLL are you guys focusing on when it comes to things that you're looking to adopt or embed this year?
So we have to look at the holistic approach for 2025 on aligning all our ecosystem, and we've obviously got heavy investment into AI. So one of the initiatives that we're focusing on is something called Project Beacon. So we aim to showcase all of our technology ecosystem in action across commercial properties, and that will be putting into place our systems and also best in breed products in the market. So the aim will be to show practically how that technology can be applied and deployed in real life scenarios across Asia Pacific. So we've already got 3 beacons running, and some of the features include automating the buildings and a lot of their operations, introducing AI to functions like concierge, allowing the building to report problems and then self-deploy contractors, vendors to repair those systems and that may have failed. We've also got something called JLL GPT, which is our internal AI assistant. So that's been around since August 2023. It's used globally by 47,000 people to augment and amplify their expertise. Last year, we released JLL Falcon, which is sort of our foundation for innovation in our products and services. So it's got a suite of systems, which includes multimodal AI models, data pipelines, and incorporates the security and privacy features and the natural language and semantic processing. So I think you can expect to see more releases of new tools that will be powered by JLL Falcon, and that will be both internal and commercially available, externally available products, and that will include specific data assistants and agents that will begin to take action for us and our clients.
Okay, cool. And so here's the question that here's I would genuinely like to understand, because where commercial real estate becomes residential is in that multifamily kind of building space. And we have very different kind of ways that the two sectors behave. And as you're saying, it's a data arms race. So in data arms race, you usually, in any arms race, you have to pick a side, and it can be hard for prop techs who are trying to win maybe more than one client who may. How do you bring all these things together? Like where does that? How is JLL behaving around partnerships or collaborations? Like, are you happy to collaborate with people with prop techs who are also working with other clients, or does that actually become part of the kind of side that you have to pick?
So I think look, in terms of partnerships, we're definitely open to partnerships. And in 2017, the company set up an investment arm called JLL Spark, which was a $100 million fund to invest in new technologies and to bring that forward, to trial it and pilot it on sort of the opportunities that we have in the business. So in terms of partnerships, I think it's definitely on our roadmap. We actively encourage new companies to come to us and to speak to us about the opportunities and the new technology innovations that they've got. So, and it's not ruled out if they've already got something in agreement with other companies. We just really, really want the companies that do something very, very well, and it doesn't have to be an all-encompassing platform, which I think is where most platforms will fall over. They try and achieve too much. If we look at a niche function, say for instance, extracting and tagging data from a BMS, if you can offer that reliably and consistently, then you'll become ubiquitous in the market. If you tie that to an analytics package where there's a tie-in period for the analytics, it takes a long time to roll out, you can't integrate with any other platforms, then it becomes a less attractive possibility for us.
Okay, so I guess it's not the company. Well, it's not. We know, don't we? And we know this from thousands of examples in residential. It's not the best tech that wins, or the company with the best tech that wins. It's the company that applies tech the best that wins, usually, because it's all about the application, not just about the tech that you've chosen. So I'm just mindful of time, sorry, because I can see the time, and we have had some really great questions, so I'm gonna put these forward. Trevor Delaney has asked us, one probably for Sev or for John, but is the changing environmental risk analysis like floods, erosion, proximities to rivers an important aspect of buyer consideration? And who's responsible for bringing it to the table for discussion? Should it be the agent, the vendor, the buyer, or a real estate institute?
Sev, I'm happy to start, and you can back it up with some data afterwards. Look, I think it is actually a particularly pressing question for no other reason. There's going to be more and more of it. We just look at northern New South Wales and southern Queensland and see some of the issues. It's going to be brought to the table anyway. It's going to be brought to the table by the insurance companies, who will either refuse to insure, or the costs will continue to escalate dramatically, particularly once government stops subsidising in some of these really key areas. And it's going to be brought to the table by the banks, who are going to be very concerned about the assets that they're lending against. And I suspect at some point in time, much as I'm hearing mainly denials that this is happening at the moment, is that the banks are going to, in rating their portfolios, there is likely to be more opportunity or better margin provided to properties that are regarded as lower risk. So in terms of whose responsibility it is, one of the things that great data would do is actually produce very quickly a map of any given property and say, this is where it sits, this is what you're looking at, this is what the risk is. Agents are responsible in almost every jurisdiction for delivering content around material facts to someone. So if it's something that could impact the decision or will impact the value of the property, they have a legal obligation to disclose it. These things get complicated, and I think that's the other issue. Sometimes owners don't even know they've got a problem, in what they're sitting in. And you mentioned multifamily earlier on. The issues around some of this stuff, in Strata, which is obviously an area that I think we're all going to get more and more passionate about. We have buildings that people simply don't know the problems that are likely to emerge in either latent defects or failure to maintain properly. These buildings, differently to the ones Chris is talking about, are being effectively the responsible entity is a bunch of unpaid volunteers, with no particular expertise in managing multi-million-dollar properties. There's issues emerging in that strata space that the insurers, CAQ, I've had a couple of long conversations recently with, are very, very keen to understand better, to empower people better, to give them better information, but they'd also like to find a way for reducing risk for both the insurer and the owners, and everyone benefits in that space. So I don't think it's a simple answer, but I think the issues around environmental risk and defect risk and building quality risk are all starting to look very, very similar at the moment.
Yeah. So, Sev, in your new AVMs, you must be pulling in environmental risk into some of those. Are you seeing environmental data coming through?
So and look, as John was saying, this is a really complex problem, right? It impacts many stakeholders right across the ecosystem. And absolutely, what we're seeing demand from some of our clients, whether that's our banking customers or our insurance customers, around that type of property data that helps them better identify and differentiate types of risks and the extent of that risk. And so that's something that we're able to offer them as well. And I think as time goes on, we're going to see more customers ask for that granularity of data. But also what we're going to see is ask for a lot more on the granularity of the types of risks and let them make better decisions in terms of how they deal with it. To John's earlier point, a lot of the stakeholders facing this are going to have their own reactions to it. And I think what we'll see is a lot of the market forces and will start to shape how we tackle this going forward. But at the same time, I also wouldn't be surprised to see some regulation if the market itself doesn't handle this in the right way.
And Chris, your end of town are usually building the large apartment blocks or doing a lot of that stuff. At what point do you think we're going? Is it 2025 or is it more in the future that we're going to start to see the data of the build, of the materials and the construction and what's gone into that building? When is that going to get started to be handed over to the strata when they take over? So they actually have real data around the digital twin that goes with the building so that they don't have to run reports or hire consultants to tell them what went into it.
The data's always been available. It's just the handover process has just been so bad in the past, and it's because the handover and the commissioning are the last things on the build, and usually any delays are sequential, so they will have less time to do all of that, which means the result is that the handover and the soft landings, which is what the ideal will be, is rarely actually put into place. Hopefully there will be AI may be able to help predict some of these things more, and with standardizations of systems that we're seeing slowly, that may become more intuitive. But I don't think it's going to be a date where suddenly it becomes this is much better. It's going to be reliant on good quality project management from start to finish, and that's often hard with disruptions in the market and disruptions in supply chains.
The question for you, John.
Can I just add a cynical remark to that, Kylie? And it's not specifically designed to be, but of course there is a big difference between build to sell and build to keep. And it is a cost to provide decent handover. It also probably provides more information that may or may not reflect well on the building or the developer or otherwise who's built it at the best cost they could get to sell these properties and hopefully get out of the building altogether within a few months of completion. So I think this is an area where regulation does need to do more. We do need to start to compel proper handover. If you've got a customer and you're a developer, the good developers do this, the bad ones don't. then you should actually be compelled to provide more experience and something better, because these people are paying you millions and millions of dollars to move into a property. And this is an area that data can help with, but only if it's produced in the first place.
But it is produced in the first place, isn't it? Like it starts at the BIM and the CAD level when when it's being designed, and then it doesn't move all the way through. So this is where I think 2025 needs to be the year where we actually start to get really serious about transforming the construction sector for a start. I mean, that's not going to be a one-year journey, but like let's start there. Also transforming development and planning, because we know there's a lot of PropTech starting to open up in that space, which is really important. And then just making sure that, like Sev was talking about, that the data, the buyer data, the process needs to become shorter. It needs to become more transparent. Buyers need to have control and visibility of it. And the same thing needs to happen across the entire housing or spectrum and property spectrum, that we need like easy handoffs of like the data flowing easily, consistently, transparently from one step to the next, so that the businesses that have got the best ability to apply the use of that become the ones that can charge the most and have the best client experiences and win in market. Yeah. Sorry about that. So, look, gentlemen, we have had a couple of other questions around questions around AVMs. Do they include school zones? I'm pretty sure, Sev, that your AVMs do include school zones and where things are near, do they?
Yeah, there's so many data points that feed into our AVMs.
Yeah, and some questions around some curious questions around how many people move just a few kilometres up the road versus how many people move a long way away for work or whatever. But I think we will just respond back to them individually. Gents, I am mindful of the time. We have hit 2 o'clock, so but we could probably talk about the predictions for 2025 all through 2025, and I'm sure the conversation will be ongoing. Thank you to all three of you for dealing with some of the off-the-cuff questions that I know you maybe hadn't prepped for. But it has been a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you at our board strategy day. Now, the Proptech Australia, newly branded, we are in the process of changing the website and all of our branding, but we do have a huge program of activity coming up for 2025. We have the PropTech Awards that we'll be announcing very shortly, our PropTech Forum, which will be in Melbourne this year in November. We've got a whole lot of new member and meetup initiatives, representation on government initiatives, including energy efficiency, a whole lot of new standard discussions, our regular PropTech panels, and coming soon, the PropTech ecosystem map. So if you're not a member yet, but you're a part of a PropTech or a business aligned to the PropTech space, we'd love you to join us. So if you're looking at our current website, please don't judge us just yet. We're working on it. But if you would like to join, please reach out to Casey, the fabulous Casey Rodriguez, members at proptechassociation.com.au, and we will get you signed up. So once again, a very big thank you to John Means, Sev Thomassian, and Chris Havill for your predictions for 2025. It's been a great conversation. This is Kylie Davis from Proptech Australia signing off. Have a great week and keep on PropTeching.